So my name is Andrew Feinstein. I'm South African by birth. I'm currently standing against Keir Starmer in the Camden seat of Holborn and St Pancras in the general election that's happening on the 4th of July. I'm a former ANC Member of Parliament. I served under Nelson Mandela in our first democratic government, and I am the son of a Holocaust survivor who survived the war in occupied Vienna itself.
I will be voting for Andy Feinstein, definitely. Not only me, my family, my friends, they are going to vote for Andy Feinstein.
The British government effectively gave away parts of Palestine to the Israeli state. And we as Jews, we as British people were sold the lie that this was a people with no land who found a land with no people. And apartheid in South Africa and apartheid in Israel was the same thing. We were told there were no people on this land, but there were. And so the British government's reaction to Gaza in that sense is not a surprise, in that they have supported everything that the Israeli state has done in Gaza, which is a genocide. I'm an expert on the global arms trade, on conflict and on genocide. It is a genocide.
On the whole, from what we've seen anecdotally and what I'm hearing from Andrew's campaign is that overwhelmingly people who identify as Muslim, who have Muslim names, are very supportive of Andrew Feinstein.
When Labour looks at people like me, they don't even consider that I would not vote for Labour. We are not even a thought in their mind. We are young people, a person of colour, a migrant, a Muslim. They think of us as sure votes. And I hope that they are in for a big surprise. I think we have more in us, and we decided that we don't have to just settle for less. And we don't have to settle for a representation that clearly doesn't care for anything we do.
The two options we have in this country on the 4th of July are to vote for the Conservative Party or to vote for the Labour Party. And all indications at the moment are that the Labour Party will win quite a big majority of seats. And Keir Starmer, the Member of Parliament for Holborn and St Pancras in Camden, which is where I'm standing against him, is the current leader of the Labour Party. And if he is able to retain his seat and lead the government, this is a man who was a human rights lawyer, but who has refused to call for an unqualified ceasefire, who has refused to call for a halt to arms sales to Israel. And I worry that as Prime Minister, he will continue to enable Britain to facilitate and to profit from the genocide in Gaza.
And let us never forget, the United Kingdom and our politicians are complicit in this genocide. And it's not only because they refuse to call for a ceasefire, it is because they are profiteering from the British weapons that are being used to slaughter Palestinians.
The feeling, as of right now, as of 2 days ago, people are outraged at Keir Starmer because of his statement about the Bangladeshis and sending them back, or the illegal immigrants. And it's really strange because the discussion is about small boats and people. I don't know any Bangladeshi that's come here over the channel on a boat. The last scars came here 100 years ago, and they came on ships.
I think most people, there should be a bigger voter turnout, at least that's what we're hoping for. Not just because of the 14 years of austerity and of the havoc that the Tory government had wreaked on this country. But we are seeing something completely unprecedented in the Gaza genocide and in the failure of both of the mainstream parties. So I hope that a lot of people who normally wouldn't vote will.
Kentish Town West, there's an estate that they're now knocking down to build luxury flats. Now there are over 300 apartments there. They're going to be 40 low-cost apartments in the new development. It's crazy. The racism in this country really disturbs me. And anti-Semitism is a problem. And since the 2nd of October, it's gone up. But Islamophobia is a huge problem as well. And the fear that I have is that Islamophobia in this country, it comes from the state. You know, when you see Rishi Sunak outside 10 Downing Street casting aspersions, saying terrible things about Muslim organizations just because they're Muslim. When I see just yesterday my own MP Keir Starmer telling Bangladeshi people to return to their country, this is not right.
I think they called you something. They called you self-anti-Semitic?
So what they do is, because I speak out, I'm very critical of Israel, because when I got involved in the South African struggle against apartheid, even though I was a white person, my mother taught me to fight all oppression, to fight all racism. So when I started in the struggle against apartheid, I was taught by the ANC, Mandela's organization, that the Palestinian struggle is the same as our struggle against apartheid in South Africa. You know, the honor of working for someone like Nelson Mandela. But it wasn't only Mandela. There were so many others of his generation who were leaders of our struggle, who were the best human beings that I've ever come into contact with. They loved every other human being. And the first thing that Nelson Mandela said to me is, you treat every single human being you come into contact with the respect and dignity with which you want to be treated. And that's probably the most important lesson I've learned in my life. And then when we got into Parliament, because of course I worked with him before we were in Parliament, when he first came out of jail, when we were preparing during the negotiations, and then after the negotiations, the election. And then when we get into Parliament, he says to me, and to all the MPs, the moment you think that you are more important than the people who sent you here to represent them, that's the moment you're of no value to them, of no value to this country. So the Workers' Party, George Galloway's party, I have met with Mr. Galloway on a couple of occasions. We agree on a lot of things. He, like me, is an anti-imperialist. He has done incredible things for countries and people who've been negatively affected by Britain's role in the world. And I really admire him for that. We also have some differences, which I don't have a problem with having differences with people. You know, in South Africa, we had to overcome our differences to be able to end apartheid. But Mr. Galloway said publicly that his party wouldn't stand a candidate here because I am standing here, and that they call on people to support me, which was very good of him. Immigrants add a huge amount to a country. This country is composed primarily of immigrants. If people look at their ancestry, many of them are very surprised to find that their ancestors didn't come from here. They came from outside here. So I'm incredibly proud to be an immigrant, because I think immigration is a wonderful thing. I think diversity is a wonderful thing. I lived in one of the world's most diverse countries, South Africa. And I love the fact that Camden is so diverse. And we, as immigrants, contribute massively to this country. And so I would say to people, don't just vote for me as an independent because you're fed up with the two major parties, because you're fed up with Keir Starmer and his, I wish I could call it a shift to the right, but it feels as though it's been a rocket journey to the right. It's happened so far and so quickly. Vote for me also, because I'm proud to be Jewish, but to be critical of the state of Israel. I'm proud to support the Palestinian people, and particularly the people of Gaza, and I'm proud to be an immigrant.
We pushed all the community to vote for you.
Thank you. I think we're at the beginning of a profound change in British politics.
How do you see the future of Britain if Keir Starmer leads the next government?
I think that under Keir Starmer, Britain will become more divided, more unequal. But both of the main parties, the Conservatives and Labour, both want to cut now.
No, you sure?
Yeah.
And the Labour?
Labour too.
Oh my
They want to put up the defence spending, and they want to cut benefits, housing, everything else they're going to cut. The first thing I would focus on is ensuring a complete halt to arms sales to Gaza from the 5th of July. And I would speak to every single MP, because my day job, my expertise is in the global arms trade. And I'll explain to them how not only are we complicit in a genocide by continuing to sell these weapons, but we are also using the taxpayers' money in this country. Because of how corrupt the arms trade is, we are corrupting our own political system at the same time. The second thing I would do is I would seek to introduce legislation that would introduce proper rent controls so that people don't have to spend so much of their income on their housing, which I believe is a human right. And the third thing I would do is I would immediately call for significant amounts of the defense budget to be reallocated to addressing the greatest crisis we all face, which is the climate crisis, and to addressing the daily living needs of ordinary people, not just in Holborn and St Pancras and Camden, but throughout Britain.